A reading from 1 Corinthians. These familiar words of Paul to the church at Corinth are a summary of his teaching on spiritual gifts. If not used in a loving way, spiritual gifts do not serve their purpose. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful, or arrogant, or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror, dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part that I know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. The word of the Lord.
Well, we've been on a 5-week journey through spiritual gifts, and today is kind of the culmination of it as we, in a little bit, will work on these packets that you hopefully got as you came in, the packet and then the pink sheet that goes with it. But this process really began not 5 weeks ago, but really last spring when, as Tatum said, we had Janice Swenson do some surveys with us, along with another local company. And out of that long process, these 5 priorities emerged from one of those instruments that's called the Mission Action Profile, or MAP for short, survey. And you see the first 2 in particular, exploring new and innovative ways to be the church in today's culture, is one of our priorities. And really, as a segue, what we did on Friday with Lifetree Cafe fits perfectly into that. We had an experience back in the cafe where we showed a half-hour video on making tough choices that involved characters that were in ICUs in the hospital and involved wondering about organ donation. That's kind of what Lifetree is about. And then secondly, to help members recognize God at work in all aspects of our lives. I think so often through the years we've sort of segmented your faith to this morning. You know, you come into this is church, not when you're out there at work or school. That's church too, but we've kind of somehow communicated over the years that I'm going to church, meaning this building or one like it. And then you leave this place after an hour and you wonder, now what? How do I work with the rest of the week? How does my faith impact the rest of the week? Well, from these 5 priorities, 6 recommendations have flowed down, and you heard something about the first one this morning from Jana. It's on that insert. And next week we're going to talk about one that really fits today's topic very well, which was to develop a volunteer placement structure that is gift-based. And so we've been working with you for 4 or 5 weeks to help you kind of discover some things about yourself. Maybe you knew these things, maybe you didn't, but that you have a gift inside of you, at least one, and we're trying to help you figure out what to do with that gift. We're trying to focus more on you and what your gifts are and less on us in this building and what we need, what jobs we need done. Or as an old friend of mine, John Clark, he's a consultant for the James Company, says many times or said many times about financial stewardship, you need to focus on the need of the giver to give, not on the need of the church to receive. Hear that? And that's what we're trying to do with this too. We're trying to focus on your need to give of your gift today, wherever that takes you, not on our need to have jobs filled. Okay? We're going to set all of that aside and focus on you and what's going on in your life and your heart that relates to gifts. So we've been on this journey, and we started 5 weeks ago with this slide about what in the world are spiritual gifts anyway. Can we say this together or read this together off the screen? Spiritual gifts are special divine abilities given to every Christian by the grace of God through the Holy Spirit to be used to serve others and glorify God. So that's what we're talking about, first of all. That's 101, spiritual gifts. Okay? And that day I talked about the passage in 1 Corinthians 12 that really opens this whole topic up. And it gets at the topic of, or the answer of why were gifts given in the first place. And as you read through that book, you discover these reasons. So that Jesus can be proclaimed as Lord. And that's really the most important. That's why we have a band, you know. That's why they sing the songs they sing, is to proclaim Jesus as Lord, and we sing along with them. Or for the common good. Why are gifts given? It's for the sake of the whole group, whether that's the body of Christ or the wider world, and then to help you love your neighbor. And Paul, at the end of his chapter 12, segues into chapter 13, which was read just a moment ago. That's the setting for, can we back up just a little bit? That's the setting for chapter 13. So often we think of 13, well, he wrote that for weddings. I mean, I did a wedding yesterday at Usher's Ferry, and sure enough, we read 1 Corinthians 13. I mean, probably 90% of the weddings I've done, we read this. But it's really got nothing to do with weddings. And although it's wonderful, you know, the words fit. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. But it's really about spiritual gifts and how if you don't use that gift in a loving way, he says it's like a cymbal in a band that you're banging on, and it just kind of aggravates people. That's what those are like. So we got at the why question about 4 weeks ago. And then over these weeks, we've been talking about other types of questions, and we talked about your passion is where you are best suited to serve. People are passionate about very different things, aren't they, in life? You know, some are passionate about children. Some are passionate about people in poverty. Some are passionate about older people, and so on. That's your passion. We're all wired up differently. The what question is spiritual gifts, and that's found in your packet today on pages 2 and 3. They're all listed there. Hopefully some of you, many of you have filled out that survey that we handed out a few weeks ago to kind of have a self-discovery time of your gifts. And then the personal style question, Alyssa got at this last week, of how you serve. You know, how are you wired up? How many here are what you'd call introverts? Are there any introverts? Raise your hand tall there. Come on, introverts. Okay. So how many are extroverts then? Okay, hey, you're proud to raise it high, aren't you? You know? That's one way we're wired up differently, isn't it? You know? Or how many of you are, you would say, task-oriented? You really like to get a task done. Raise your hand if that's you, okay? How many of you are more kind of people-oriented? You just want to be with people. There's one over there. I can see, that's for sure. Yep, you bet. The extroverted people person. Yep. How many of you are kind of unstructured when it comes to organization? You know, you're sort of a mess. You know, you don't really need a lot of structure. There we go. And then others are more structured. You know, you're really organized. You're like to have, I mean, I had somebody after the last service getting all these sheets perfectly lined up, you know, for you guys to come in and get them, because he's a structured, task-oriented usher. Okay. So now let's talk about style and gifts and how these two can kind of fit together. If we can have the next one. Let's say you have the same passion but different gifts. How might this guide you down 3 different roads? The same passion would be children with difficult life situations. We have Bob, Nancy, and Frank. But you see on the slide there that Bob's gift is administration. Nancy's is generosity or giving. Frank's is teaching. If you follow down the 3 columns, you see they go in very different directions, don't they? Even though they have the same passion. Or let's flip it around, the next slide. What happens if you have different passions but the same gift? Let's say you have the gift of teaching. But you have one person, Kurt has the passion for senior citizens. Bonnie, her heart breaks for the homeless. She wants to do something for homeless people. Lynn has a passion for making disciples of all nations, the great commandment. And so she wants to do that in her spare time. Again, you follow it down and you see different areas of service. I don't know, can you read those somewhat? Kurt, one way he could use his teaching gift is leading Bible studies in a retirement home, like a place like Summit Point over there. They're always after us, by the way, to have classes over there, and we just don't know who to send, you know. Or secondly, Bonnie and her homeless passion, she could go to a homeless shelter and lead devotionals there. And then Lynn, with her discipleship passion, could be a small group leader or a mentor or write some other kind of program. See how this works? When you combine the passion with the gift, it takes people in different directions, like this. I think in the church, we've kind of used like the funnel approach. You know, when you pour gas into your lawnmower, and you pour that in there. If we get people with teaching, we kind of have the funnel, and down here at the bottom is Sunday school. You know, and oh, you got a teaching gift? We know what we need from you. We don't even think about these other possibilities, you know, like going out to Summit Point or homeless people. For another example, we have Dwayne sitting here. We have a ministry at the Lynn County Jail. That's where people with the gift of teaching who have a passion for people in jail in need combine those two, and they're down there every Tuesday night leading a Bible study. See how this works? So let's take a look at your packet now, if you would, please. And we have reorganized this from other years. For many years, it starts out the same, and then we would have, let's say, I think it was worship first on page 4, and we'd have stuff on there like ushering and reading the lessons and setting up communion and all the worship stuff. Now what we've done is we've reorganized it thanks to Alyssa and maybe some other people in the office. And we're starting with the A's of the gifts, which is administration. You see that on like page 4? And then we go all the way to the end, which is wisdom and writing. Okay? A to W. And everything in the middle. And so what we want you to do now is go through that. We're going to give you about 5 minutes while Lori plays, and figure out what your gift is. and look on that page, and then once you have some possibilities, like it says on the screen, go to your pink sheet, start at the top, work your way down, and if one of the items is like number 123, you just write that in those little boxes at the bottom. Okay? One other thing is, if there's no way we can have every possible way of serving, but let's say you have the gift of administration and a heart for the homeless. Write that in see that great big box at the bottom of the pink page? If there's not something in there that really fits you, write down, I feel I have the gift of administration and my passion is homeless people or poverty. Can you help me figure out something? And we'll work with you on that and help you to have a meaningful way to serve. Does that make sense? So let's take a few minutes to do that while Lori plays.